When I was in college, I heard a rumor about a man who made deals. Special deal. I'm no fool. I've read the stories of Faust and Midas, and I knew the warnings. Be careful what you wish for. But back then, I thought I was clever enough to get what I wanted without falling into the same trap. So I found myself standing outside a now-closed biker bar called Elysium, ready to see if the stories held any truth. Inside, it was dimly lit, reeking of old beer and sweat, with a jukebox playing a classic rock tune that crackled through the speakers. I spotted the usual crowd, grizzled bikers with faces like worn leather, younger ones with matching jackets and that restless look that made you think twice about crossing. The bartenders, inked from wrist to neck, moved smoothly behind the bar, taking orders without missing a beat. But then I noticed him, sitting alone in a shadowy corner booth. He was dressed strangely, like he'd walked out of a different time. His long white leather coat stood out against the darkness, and a tattered Metallica shirt peeked out beneath. He had a chain hanging from his belt, a black metal that seemed to absorb the dim light around it. He poured himself a shot from a bottle of whiskey, his movements deliberate, and I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Taking a deep breath, I walked over, trying to keep my nerves in check. He didn't acknowledge me at first, just kept staring into his glass, his eyes closed like he was savoring a memory. I waited, shifting my weight from one foot to the other, my mouth dry as sandpaper. "Excuse me, sir," I croaked out, my voice barely audible over the low hum of conversation.
Well, aren't you going to sit down?
"It's rude to sit at another man's table without being invited. Would you like some company, sir?"
Now that is funny. Yeah, go on then, take a seat.
I slid into the booth slowly, keeping my hands in my lap. I tried not to let my unease show, but my hands trembled. He poured another shot and slid it across the table toward me. I hesitated, then picked it up, trying to seem casual. The whiskey burned, but it brought warmth to my chest, a sharp contrast to the chill that seemed to cling to this stranger. "Thank you," I said, feeling like I was playing a role in a script I didn't fully understand.
Of course, but no more of this, Sir Business. Call me Mortimer.
I was about to introduce myself when he cut me off with a raised hand.
No need. I know you, Tony. Short for Anthony. You hate the name Thomas because of your dad and all the first-born sons being named that. What was it, 5 generations now? You'd rather be called Atticus like your great-great-granddad, wouldn't you?
My mouth went dry, my mind spinning. He rattled off these intimate details like they were just small talk. I forced myself to meet his gaze, my hands gripping the edge of the table so hard I thought I might leave dents. How did you...
If I am who people say I am, Death Reaper, whatever name you like, how could I not know?
He pulled out a thick, black-bound book from under the table, the chain clinking softly as he set it down. It looked impossibly old, like something that should have crumbled to dust ages ago. He flipped through the pages with careful fingers and stopped on one.
See here?
He pointed and I leaned in, seeing my full name, my date of birth, and a blank space beneath.
Now, no peeking at the ending, Tony. Wouldn't want to ruin the surprise, would you?
He tucked the book away, and it shrank to the size of a phone, disappearing into his pocket.
Now that we've got that sorted, let's get to why you're really here.
My heart pounded in my chest. This couldn't be real. None of it. But the air felt heavy, charged with a kind of tension I'd never felt before. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay in my seat. "Mortimer, I've come to make a bargain."
He watched me, those icy eyes sharp and unblinking. He took another sip from his glass before speaking, his voice soft but cutting.
And what is it you want, Tony? Wealth, love, power?
He said the words like they disgusted him, each one colder than the last. Before I could answer, he shook his head.
No, I know what you want. You want knowledge.
I nodded, barely able to speak.
"Yes, I need to understand why people are the way they are, why the world's gone mad."
Mortimer's expression softened, almost pitying.
You're asking for a curse, not a blessing. I can't sell you this, Tony. It's too dangerous, too heavy. It'll break you.
"Please, just name your price. I'll pay it."
He sighed, the sound heavy with centuries of weariness.
Fine, I'll give you your answers. But afterward, you get one more wish. Free, without strings. You're going to need it.
I barely had time to process his words before he reached across the table, pressing a finger to my forehead. A heat spread from the touch, searing through my skull, and suddenly my mind was flooded with images. Faces, voices, moments of rage and despair, of people making choices that unraveled lives. I saw the selfishness, the hatred, the ignorance, and the fear that drove people to do unspeakable things. There was no grand conspiracy, no hidden darkness pulling the strings, just a million tiny selfish acts adding up to a world of pain. I gasped, the onslaught of knowledge leaving me reeling. My head pounded, my eyes wet with tears I hadn't realized I'd shed. I clutched the edge of the table, feeling like I might fly apart. Mortimer's hand pulled away, and he watched me with an expression that mirrored the hollow ache in my chest. I took a shuddering breath, downing the shot he poured me in a single gulp, the burn of the whiskey grounding me for a moment.
Mortimer, I know what I want for my second wish.
Name it?
Take me with you. I can't stay here, not with this. I don't care what's next, just get me out of here.
For a moment, he just stared at me, then he gave a slow, sad nod. He reached beneath the table and pulled out a helmet, plain, black, and scuffed like it had seen better days. He handed it to me and I put it on with trembling hands. He led me outside into the cold October night, the rain tapping against the pavement like a heartbeat. There, waiting in the darkness, was a white Harley. Mortimer swung a leg over the bike, looking back at me with that same haunted smile. I couldn't help but let out a breathless laugh.
You know, Mortimer, they got one thing right about you in the old stories.
Oh, and what's that?
That death rides a pale horse.
He chuckled softly, a genuine sound, and I climbed onto the bike behind him. As we roared out into the night, I felt the weight of the world fall away, leaving only the cold wind and the promise of whatever lay beyond. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something like peace.